And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin, joined on this fine, what is it, Wednesday? It's Wednesday. I just had a conversation with my daughter. Tomorrow is Donut Thursday. So today is in fact Wednesday. My guest today on the other line is somebody who I don't talk to often enough. He's really effing good at what he does. He covers the Hawks for Locked On Hawks. He writes about basketball for Dime. And is just you cover the Braves also, right?
I do cover the Braves. I do all kinds of stuff, but in
Yeah.
the NBA world, it's Locked On Hawks and Dime. But yes, I do cover the Braves too.
Yeah, you're one of those, because I came up this way too. Basically, in this industry, I was just like, anywhere I can get a byline.
Yeah.
And so like it started out as Dodger stuff, and I've moved away from it. But coming up and covering the Dodgers and covering the Lakers, and then for a little while cover the Clippers or whatever. It was just like, wherever you need me, as long as I can get paid to talk about or write about sports, cool. And that's why I've always like really respected the way that you go about your stuff. So thank you very much for hopping on, man.
It is my pleasure. I have a feeling, as I joked today, that we'll be talking a lot about the Hawks, like deep bench guys, like really huge detail on guys that Lakers fans don't care at all about. Seth Lundy is my guy. We'll talk about him a lot. I'm kidding, but I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
No, yeah, we for sure. We're gonna get way into the weeds on rotation choices.
Rotations,
and all
exactly.
That. Yeah. The reason, obviously, that we are talking about this, the Lakers and the Hawks have been embroiled in talks. I would say off and on for a few weeks now. Talking about Dejounte Murray. They've also, there have been various iterations of the trade. Most often, and the closest I believe that they got to pulling off a trade was D'Angelo Russell, Jalen Hood-Schifino, the 29 first, maybe some additional draft capital, with Murray going back to the Lakers. Apparently, and this is where I'm kind of curious if you'd like to fill in some of the gaps here. Apparently, at some point, the focus became then about Austin Reeves, and that's when initially, at least, the talks broke off. They've since resumed, but the Hawks are still kind of standing on their business and demanding Austin Reeves. There's been some stuff about like, we're not really interested in D'Angelo Russell. Can you find a third team for him? But I do think it winds up kind of circling back to a desire to employ Austin Reeves rather than whatever else the Lakers have to offer here. Where am I missing from your side of coverage here?
No, I think it's a really good synopsis. I think, I don't know how close it got, but there was a time, I don't know, a week and a half ago where it felt like it was like almost not necessarily imminent, but close. You know what I mean? I was getting calls, getting texts like, "Hey, be ready if something happens here."
Yep.
And it didn't happen. And, that's kind of what happens. It's the NBA. Trades fall through. I always say on my podcast, to the frustration of Hawks fans, that trades are hard to make. They just are. They don't seem hard to make, but when you have all the different parties involved, you got ownership involved, especially on the Hawks side, a very active owner that's involved. You have agents involved and all these front office voices on all sides, and it could be hard. So, yeah, I think what you said makes sense. I think that the reported structure is the most likely structure in the end. If this happens, would be, exactly what you kind of laid out there. Russell in the pick for sure, and then some combination of Hood-Schifino or Max Christie or whatever it is. The Hawks, I think, smartly ask for Austin Reeves. I think the Lakers are not going to do Austin Reeves, it seems, and that's a very natural thing. Like, it can be frustrating, but if you're the Hawks, and I guess I'll speak on the Hawks side. Why wouldn't you ask for Austin Reeves? Like,
Yeah.
I actually don't think that Austin Reeves is the best fit in Atlanta. I think he and Trae Young would not fit well together. But put that to the side for a second.
Yeah.
Asset wise, value wise, trade value. How do you want to say that? Austin Reeves is very clearly the best thing that the Lakers can offer outside of LeBron and AD, which they're not going to offer. So it's like, why wouldn't you ask for that? The Hawks asking price to other teams has basically been, in some form or fashion, 2 first-round picks and a player or something else. The Lakers don't have 2 first-round picks, which we all know. So it's like, you have to sort of
like a
together.
Pseudo first-round pick in Hood-Schifino, but he's not. Like the
but
pick
you know how
is a
this
valuable
is.
thing.
Yeah, you know how this is though. With Hood-Schifino is a real prospect. That's a real guy. He's a sweetener, but it's the drive off the lot thing. When you're a mid to late first-round pick a year ago, your value in trade, if you haven't done anything, which he hasn't, it's not his fault he hasn't done anything, but he hasn't done anything, your value is not a first rounder anymore. Like, you're kind of valued as a second, as a high, maybe a good second round pick, something like that. So, and then the Russell thing, which I'm sure we'll talk about, is why the Hawks have no desire to take D'Angelo Russell, from what I hear, and that just makes logical sense. It's not even about
Yeah.
D'Angelo. Like D'Lo's a fine player. I'm not the biggest D'Lo guy, but like he is objectively a fine value on that contract. He does good things on offense, etc. But in Atlanta, you don't need D'Angelo Russell when you have Trae Young on your team. So
Yeah.
it's this very logical standoff. So I think you're in the right place there. There are other ways to kind of do it. You know, early on, I was wondering if they might get sort of involved with Rui as the matching salary. Like there are other ways, but I think that at the end, the Hawks are probably going to hold out as long as they can. And there are other teams involved here. It's not just the Hawks and the Lakers. That's always important to remember too. Like there are other teams, but if it is the Lakers, I think it's going to be something close to what you lay out there and what's been reported. And hopefully, if you're the Hawks, like you're trying to set up a situation where you can send Russell somewhere else, either as part of the trade or immediately after. If you do it soonish, you could kind of do the Kyle Lowry, like the trade for him, and then
add to it.
yeah, wait a week and then do it again. But if it comes down on February 7th, it kind of has to be a 3-team deal. So I'm done rambling, but I think your feel there is correct. There are all kinds of whispers out there, but the loudest ones are essentially that pick's going to be in any trade, obviously, and then whatever sweeteners, and then one matching salary, whether it be, and probably going to be Russell.
Yeah, the Russell aspect of this is interesting because, like you said, like you mentioned, the fit between Reeves and Trae. I actually think Atlanta would probably flip Reeves in a separate deal and see what they could get for him. I think Reeves, like on his own, is probably worth like a first round pick, probably if it was just somebody interested in Reeves. And I think that's probably the direction they would go, because if you have Trae Young and Austin Reeves in your backcourt, you weren't defending anything.
I totally agree, and that's like, it's something that's hard to convey to Hawks fans. Even like, why are they asking for Austin Reeves? And it's like, well, because that's something the Lakers can offer that has real value. It doesn't mean you have to keep him long term, but if the choices are, you can have D'Angelo Russell and a pick, or you can get Austin Reeves and something. Like, you would rather have Reeves, even if they have no interest in keeping him. You're better off doing that. Same thing as Russell. If they can find a situation where they can flip Russell for non-negative value, that would sweeten things. It doesn't make it. It's not a huge thing, but it's different than if you have to pay to get off of Russell. And that becomes a sticking point, which is where I think we might be at the end of the day. Like, the Hawks are not going to take D'Angelo Russell and then also send something out with him to get off his contract. That becomes a negative.
Yeah, I think that's where I think, if this was to happen, or if this would happen, the Lakers would have to send out extra draft capital to, like, Orlando is a team that I've kind of kept my eye on, right, with the Gary Harris deal there. He and Trae Young make more sense together than D'Angelo Russell, and that's expiring.
Yep.
You have the expiring contracts that, like, Brooklyn has on their books as well. And D'Lo has gone and had some success, obviously, in Brooklyn as well. So they're another team that I've kept an eye on. The Lakers, this is where, like, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but it's usually in a situation like this where two teams are kind of circling each other in the way that the Hawks and Lakers are. Usually what a GM will do is they'll reach out to a team that they've done business with before and be like, hey, can you just help us out here? Like And I think in this case that would be Orlando, who the Lakers made a deal with last year from Mo Bamba. And I think Rob would kind of call and say, hey, what do you need? Just like a second round? Do you want the Clippers second rounder for this next draft or whatever? Help us out and help us make this thing happen. Even before I probably should have done this right from the get. Why? Like, so essentially when I call around and I ask around, because obviously I have people I talk to, closer to the Lakers, and I have other people that I talk to around the league. And when I ask people around the league what is going on here, I get so much head scratching, because it's just like, we don't know what they're trying to accomplish. I don't know how you rebuild on the fly with Trae Young. What is going on? Like, what's your sense of what they're trying to accomplish here?
It is a kind of a high wire act, to your point. And also it depends on who you ask and who you talk, even around the Hawks, which are, of course, my best sources are around the Hawks. Even then, like, it's hard to get a straight answer, which makes some sense on some level. They don't want to reveal their whole plan and get boxed in. But it is interesting to me because they have, I'll do the short Hawks version. They have these 3 picks that they owe to San Antonio, right, for the Dejounte Murray trade originally. Mm-hmm. And they're it's 2 picks and a swap in the middle, and they're all unprotected. So essentially, they don't have their draft for 3 years, 25 through 27. So not this year, the next 3 after that.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it really hard to do like a full blown rebuild, right?
Right.
For instance,
point in tanking. You can't
yeah,
lose.
Exactly. So for all of the every 6-month report that we get about the Lakers being interested in Trae Young that we always get, it was this week it was from McManaman. It was Jovan last year, and it's not wrong. They're obviously going to. I
did it before too. Like the whole hold on to the 29 pick and see if you can go.
Yeah,
and get him. Yep.
But for all of that, like the Hawks. Yeah. I don't think that, for me, I wouldn't do that anyway, but there is a school of thought like, hey, let's just blow this whole thing up. But the hold up on that is it's hard to do that if you can't bottom out and get your own picks to be good, right? So put that on the table. They still believe in Trae Young. Trae Young is still very, very good. Polarizing player as he is, but they did reach conference finals with Trae Young. I don't think that was necessarily indicative of their talent level that year. They had some good fortune, but they were playing at a really high level, and he was the best player on a Final Four team. That did happen, and they're anchored to that. And also, this is something that Lakers fans won't really understand. Trae Young is the best player on the Hawks in 30 years. It is. I mean, you could argue Joe Johnson, you could argue Al Horford. I get it. You could argue Dikembe Mutombo in the 90s. As far as like
stars would argue Josh Smith.
Sure. You could argue like star wattage, and look, I'm trying to give you a little bit of the picture here. Like that's also part of this too. If you're ownership and you're the city. Trae does not have a 100% approval rating in the city anymore, I would say. Like, there are skeptics out there, and I don't blame them necessarily, but he does have a star power that no one in the city has had since Dominique Wilkins. So, all that said, they're not ready to trade Trae Young. I think it's going to be Trae's going to have to ask for a trade if that happens for it to get done. Maybe that'll happen in the future. But that's why they're trying to do this retooling effort on the fly, in short. They can't really rebuild. They don't want to rebuild. They have Trae. They like Jalen Johnson, who's been really good this year. He's kind of the other untouchable guy. It's Trae and Jalen. And the problem is, for a long time, the Hawks have kind of kicked the can down the road. Like, since the conference finals run, all they've really done is retain their own guys at market value. Not like disastrous contracts, but like they're paying full price to retain their guys every time. And then they wait too long to trade them. So John Collins, perfect example. Really good player. Paid him what he was worth, basically, on the market. Didn't squeeze him at all.
It was never a terrible contract.
Right.
He was fine.
Didn't squeeze him at all, though. Like, he was restricted, and they didn't really try to, pull him. Like, in some ways that some teams will do that. They just paid him, and then they dragged it out for 3 years. Yeah. Capella, they extended for 2 years. When they kind of didn't have to. He was really good in the conference finals run. Huge reason why they did that. But now he's almost 30, and he's not the same player anymore, and they haven't traded him. They drafted center at a Congo at 6 overall, and they still have him and Capella on the team after 4 years. It doesn't make any sense. DeAndre Hunter, same thing. So I'll go shorter, but it's hard to retool too because you have all these guys that are at the very least properly paid, maybe even overpaid at this point. Your Capellas, your Hunters, etc. And it's like hard to pivot off that.
They're overpaid because their contracts escalated, right?
Yeah,
it's not that like when they sign their deals, I never looked at it as like, that is a terrible contract. It's just that you find yourself in a spot where that core has reached its ceiling or maybe, reached it before and now you're trying to retool.
Exactly. And so that's the short version, but also like they haven't been that good. That's really what it comes down to is that they're not in the tax, but because they have intentionally ducked the tax or else they would be there. They've kind of one time per year, the last 2 or 3 years, they have traded someone for tax savings and made their team worse in the process. Mm-hmm. It was John Collins this last year. It was Kevin Huerter 2 years ago. And that's where you get stuck in the middle to where they're the 10 seed right now as we're talking. They have been in the play-in the previous 2 years. There isn't a lot of evidence that this is going to be a core that's going to be what they thought they were going to be. And that's the other reason, like on the why front about Murray, is that they made that kind of not all in, but they pushed a lot of chips in for Murray. They paid a lot. They probably overpaid. The consensus, I don't know about you, when that deal happened around the league, people were like, "Man, that's a lot for Dejounte Murray. Like it's a lot." It wasn't like ridiculous, but it was like, man, it's like 110% of the asking. You know what I mean? It wasn't like
it happened around the time of like the Gobert deal. So every first rounder, like if anybody was getting moved, it was for like every first rounder you ever had in your like second son or something like that.
That's right.
Like it was insane. And I remember I was talking to an executive even back then, and they were like, the way that we're trading these first, we're gonna have to add another round to the draft because nobody's gonna have any draft picks soon.
No, that's right.
In Oklahoma City.
Yeah, the timing of that, and they at the end of the day, they paid more than they should have for Dejounte. And that, but
Mhm.
the thing is, if it works, nobody cares. That's
Yeah.
always that's the NBA world. If the overpay works, then no one minds. But if the overpay doesn't work, and by the way, they've somehow been generously the same team. They've actually been worse.
Yeah.
That's not Murray's fault, but their results in the last year and a half have been worse than they were in the previous year or two before that. And that's not where you want to be after you pay basically three picks to get a guy. So that leaves them in the middle, and that's why they're doing it. And then there's the other issue of fit. And I firmly believe, which I'm sure you're going to ask me at some point, I think Dejounte Murray needs to be on a team where he is the point guard and has the ball. That is not what it's ever going to be in Atlanta. He's done a valiant job, actually, offensively, of growing his game as a shooter. He's done some stuff that's been helpful on that end of the floor. But you even see it when Trey sits on the bench in the middle of games. Like Dejounte's, it's almost like his eyes light up. Like he's a different player when he's the guy on the court, and not necessarily the best player, but the guy with the ball, the point guard.
Yeah.
In LA, it's different with LeBron and AD, who are obviously better players than he is, but they're not like LeBron's kind of a point guard sometimes. But you know what I mean? Him and Trey are just they overlap so much, and Trey's just better at that offensive stuff than Murray is. So the fit doesn't work there. Defensively, the fit hasn't worked. And again, the team success, no one's having fun when you're underperforming. And the Hawks have underperformed this for the entirety of the Dejounte Murray era. They've been below where they're, and it's like the vibes are bad, and here we are.
Yeah, when you kind of frame it that way, it makes more sense. I don't know, and especially when you mentioned the fact that they don't have control over their own picks, because like if they did, I think it would be a pretty clear spot to trade Trey. But if seeing as they don't, then you see what you can do to retool around him. Murray is this interesting kind of player because he's enjoying like way above average shooting this year for like compared to the rest of his career. And that terrifies me as a Laker fan because every player seems to come to LA and forget how to shoot. And we saw that with Dennis Schroeder, where with OKC, he had a great shooting year. The Lakers went and brought him in, and there were things that he did well. And I think now people have like kind of they look at him with some kind of rosy colored glasses because his replacement, Gabe Vincent, hasn't done anything, literally not anything this year.
Yeah.
But like it was at times kind of clunky between Schroeder especially when he wanted to start, and LeBron and AD and just kind of making it all work. With Murray, the thing that I like about it, especially if the Lakers are able to, and my guess is that they find some deal here. If a deal happens, like I can for sure tell you, based off of the people that I've spoken to, they are not including Austin in this trade. Like that is,
I've heard the same. I mean, you have better Lakers sources than I do, but I've said for a while, I will be very, very surprised if Reeves is in the deal. I never saw that as I get why the Hawks have asked, but I also understand the Lakers they're just not going to do it. So,
but yeah, you're right. They should ask. It's it's good asset management and all those things. But the thing I like about the Reeves and Austin pairing is that and this isn't necessarily the case with the Murray and Austin trade pairing, not the Reeves and Austin pairing. That would be a singular player, but with Murray and Austin has shown a proclivity to move off of the ball. Like if that's when D'Angelo Russell started playing better lately, it's because Austin stepped back and said, "Here, you go do that thing over there, and I'll work as more of a connector here." And like you said, you can't really do that with Trae Young when he's the better player, and because of Murray's kind of shooting issues, that's made it kind of complicated over the course of his time in Atlanta to make that work. But in those final moments, though, at the end of games when LeBron has the ball in his hands, how successful do you think Murray would be operating off of the ball off of LeBron, which isn't necessarily the same thing as operating off of Trae, but still it is being a more of a connector. Do you think he can do those things?
I think it is a better fit. It is not a perfect fit. Is the way that I've been saying it to people. Like, I think he does make sense in LA in general on offense. But you mentioned the shooting this year. I think he is genuinely a better shooter than he's ever been. I think he's worked on it. I think that his mechanics are better. I think that he knew in Atlanta, whether he wanted to or not, I think he kind of knew that he was going to have to figure it out off the ball more and be a catch and shoot guy and take more threes.
Yeah.
Quinn Snyder came in and basically pushed him out. Dejounte loves mid-rangers, man. He loves a mid-ranger. And he'll tell you, like, and by the way, he's one of the few guys, he's not as good as like KD, but he is actually one of the few guys who is good enough where that shot's not terrible. You know what I mean? He's actually really good at that shot. But
especially when he's playing point and he's being guarded by like 6'1", 6'2" guys.
Yes, he can shoot over guys. He's pretty long. But yeah, to your point, at point guard makes more sense. But yeah, I don't think he's a true talent 39% three-point shooter, which is what he currently is. As you and I were talking, that's where he is for this year. I would bet the under on that as far as like his actual baseline. But I do think that his baseline is better than it was before. Like if you look at his career numbers, they're like in the low, like 33 range. I can't remember where it is right now for his career, but it's pretty ugly. He wasn't a total non-shooter in San Antonio, but he was not a good shooter in San Antonio. He's come a long way, but I think ultimately he still is most comfortable in the mid-range and off the dribble. He'll shoot a catch and shoot. I think there's that power of LeBron where like guys are more willing to just buy in a little bit more because they just kind of know that's LeBron. I kind of buy that with Murray, whereas like I don't think it's like a rivalry thing with Murray and Trey, but like Trey doesn't have the same, they're at the same position. Like it's kind of they kind of overlap so much, whereas LeBron is LeBron. So yeah, long story. I think that Dejounte is a threat. He gets guarded. That's important too. But I think that I would be interested to see him, and we'll never know this for a couple more years. Like I want to know what his large sample shooting numbers look like now that he's a different shooter. I do think that it's going to be worse than it's been so far this year, but he can knock down jumpers off of the catch, and also just kind of be a second side creator. The one thing that will frustrate you if this deal happens though is that he is not a quick reaction guy. He likes to catch and hold. He's a catch and hold and survey guy, which is not but yeah, that's the one thing, and that's going to drive LeBron crazy, I'm sure. Maybe that'd be different in LA, but his natural inclination dating back years, and it's gotten him a long way, is to catch and hold and survey. He's been better at taking shots because they've encouraged him to shoot faster, but he does, at the end of the day, he likes to dribble and he likes to take mid-rangers and kind of be someone who cooks on his own, for instance.
Well, that makes me a little nervous. That is because the thing that I was actually excited about with Gabe, and I talked about this with Pete back when they made the signing, was Gabe's ability to operate within different sized windows, right? Yeah, if he has time, if it's early enough in the clock and he can take 4 or 5 dribbles, he can do that. Obviously, he's a point guard. But if the ball rotates over to him and the situation calls for a quick swing to the corner or quickly pulling or attacking a closeout, he can do those things as well. And that would be something that would make the fit a little more tricky. I don't think it would be a deal breaker. I also think, and this is where I don't think we do a very good job in analyzing guys in these kinds of trade talks and stuff like that, realizing how much a situation impacts a player, right? So lately, I keep on hearing about how Murray hasn't defended since like the Trump administration. And it's like, okay, but it's difficult to defend at a high level when your guard mate is Trae Young, just like it's what's hurt the Lakers a ton this year is that they've started D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves as the backcourt. And it doesn't matter who they have at the small forward. Yeah, Vanderbilt gives you more of a chance, but it's really difficult to make up for that many options for a defense to really kind of pick on. Do you think Murray has slipped as a defender, has slipped athletically, or do you think in the right situation he could go back to being more of the defender that we saw while he was a Spur?
Yeah, so that's the $1 million question in a lot of ways, honestly, and it's one that I will admit, like I don't think we could possibly know the answer in full. Like I have an idea. I've seen every minute of his Hawks career. And look, the reports of his defense being worse are true. He has not been a good defender in Atlanta. He has not. Now, there are context things. Yes, Trae is there. I actually think Trae's actually been more than a little bit. He's actually been kind of okay-ish this year defensively. Not good, but he'll never be good, but he's been better.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's like the Damian Lillard thing. I'm shooting for average.
Yeah, and that's
let me be average. You would love great on offense.
You would love average, but anyway, I think Murray has gotten worse in Atlanta. There actually were rumblings. I don't want to overstate it too much, but when the Hawks made the trade, I called some folks in San Antonio who I trust and watched some film. His last year in San Antonio, he was not quite as good either defensively. And by the way, that actually makes sense because he was carrying this like 35% usage level. You remember that was a bad Spurs team and
Yeah.
he was the guy clearly, and he put up a lot of numbers. But people were like, "Hey, watch his defense," and I'm like, "Okay, I'll watch it." And I was like, "Okay, well, actually, it wasn't that good." And look, this is a very I'm not this is not me caping up for Dejounte Murray, but he came into the league as a late first round pick and was a guy who got on the floor as a defender. Like
Yeah.
that's how he made his bones. So it's different when I mean, honestly, I did a Lakers show recently, and it was the comp that actually was thrown to me, and it's not the same as Austin Reeves, but like, you remember when Austin first broke in and he was playing more
Hmm.
defense than he does now? It's kind of what
Yeah.
happens when guys have to get on the floor, they play more defense, and they kind of know that. I think Dejounte has it in him to be better than he's been in Atlanta. I will say that. I do think that he would be better in LA for two reasons. Number one, he'd be playing point guard, and I think he's better defending point guards. Um,
Yeah.
and by the way, he's done that a lot in Atlanta too, because the Hawks hide Trey. They don't have Trey guard the point guard every night, unless it's a let's just say they're playing Donovan Mitchell or something. Dejounte's the guy that has that assignment, not Trey. So
Yeah.
it's a one-on-one thing. But I think that physically, Dejounte has good size for a point guard. He's long, especially for a point guard, but he's really skinny. And like, him having to guard wings is not something that you love. He can kind of do it, but it's not his best
Yeah.
trait. And off the ball is where he's been, I think, even worse in Atlanta. Is like, he gets beat back cuts, and his best trait defensively is playmaking. Like, he's always been a really good steals guy, which I think has
Yeah.
covered up for some of his slippage defensively. He still gets steals. So I think in LA he'd be better for role reasons, and also when you have AD behind you, everybody looks a little bit better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Hawks, while Clint Capella has been good, the current version of Clint Capella is not the current version of Anthony Davis. It's not a thing like that. So, and also situation. I mean, I think fresh start, you're always going to get a guy's buy-in. Like, especially when he first gets there, if this happens,
Yeah.
I think you always kind of have that, like, I'm going to prove to you guys, I've been hearing about this defense stuff, I'm going to ramp it up a little bit. You probably see that too. So
I feel sorry for the guard who who has to bring the ball up against him that night. That's gonna suck.
I mean, I think the old days of early San Antonio are gone. I don't think that guy's not there anymore. I don't think, but I do think that he is potentially going to be better somewhere else than he's been in Atlanta. But again, I don't want to. It's something I try to fight against being in the weeds too much. But having watched every minute, like, he's not been good in Atlanta. That's not just made up. Like, that, he's not been a good defender in Atlanta. That's not been. He just hasn't been. It's been disappointing, and that's honestly the theory of the case. The whole thing on the Hawks side was that they were hoping he was going to not single-handedly fix their perimeter defense, but be a huge cog in it, and that didn't happen. Again, in LA, everybody around him it's just a better system. It's a better infrastructure defensively. And now there are questions. You put him next to Austin Reeves, who we talked about earlier, not a great defender.
Some of the same issues.
Yeah, but the rest of the situation is better, I think, in LA defensively than it is in Atlanta, which I'm sure would at least help him a little bit.
Yeah, if they get hit, like, what I would look forward to is like a lineup where while Austin rests, you have like Max out there, and now you have Dejounte guarding his natural position. You have Max guarding twos, and then you can have a Torian Prince out there who can defend a wing, or a Rui out there who's a little slower footed, and you can make that work. And you have, whether it's AD in the middle or whatever, that's a defensive lineup that I think allows Murray to be Murray. And if he can, like you're talking about, make defensive plays rather than be solid, and kind of be the solid piece in the backcourt, I think that's where he would look his best. I also want to spend a little bit of time here before we get you out of here talking about the other guys that Atlanta might be looking to move, and as part of this kind of build a plane while it's in flight rebuild that they're trying.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Clint Capella. He has 2 years on his deal, this year and next year. You have DeAndre Hunter, Lakers legend DeAndre Hunter.
That's true.
He has 3 years after this season on his contract.
Yep.
Murray's extension kicks in next year. Bogdan has 3 years after this season as well. I do know that the Lakers have had separate conversations with the Hawks about Bogdanovich specifically. If the such a trade was to expand, right, you could have Rui going to Atlanta. From what you've been able to gather, is there an interest in Rui? He's in kind of a weird spot.
Yeah, I honestly, I almost asked you earlier when we were talking on the show. But yeah, I don't really have a good feel. Like, at one point I was thinking they might be interested in Rui, not necessarily as a centerpiece, but it's they have to match salary, and Rui's an interesting mid-tier salary. I candidly don't know. He kind of makes some sense in Atlanta. He kind of also wouldn't in some ways. Um,
Yeah.
he is kind of those he's an interchangeable guy that could be useful. They do value Bogdanovich though. Not to go down the tangent too much. Like
Yeah.
I would love to
He
know.
should. He's still good.
Yeah, well, that's strongly agree. Bogdanovich is actually, I think, underrated nationally. Like he's a very,
Yeah.
very good offensive player, like very good. And his knee, knock on wood, has held up this year. He's actually been healthy this year. He's had knee issues the last couple years before this, and because of the age and the miles, it's a cheap contract. I mean, it's a team option at the end. It's actually a very good deal for him in the current landscape. But and I say that because I'm very sure the Hawks would rather have Bogey than Rui. So you're looking at like extra. You have to get something extra in the deal. It's not like the Hawks are going to value Rui above Bogey. I would love to, honestly, going back to our first conversation about this on the show, the Hawks priority level, like for the short term, because if they're going to even do a slight step back retool job, you would want to trade Bogdanovich. He's a guy he's going to be 30. He's a veteran guy that's not going to get
Mhm.
better, you wouldn't think. But at the same time, he's not one of the guys you always hear the Hawks would like to trade. He's
No.
available. He's available in trade, but they know he's good. They value him. So it's this really interesting back and forth about like what they actually want. But yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if it expanded to include Murray and Bogdanovich in the same deal, because just because of where the Lakers are asset wise, it's just hard to get like so much to go along with what they'd be sending out. Aside from Austin Reeves, of course, take him off the board for a second. If you
Yeah.
just say, okay, what's it going to take to get Murray and Bogdanovich? I don't know what else they can throw in there. I mean, you're talking about swaps and seconds and all, and just, maybe they can get there. I don't know. But if it's like a separate individual deal, I think Bogdanovich would help the Lakers a lot. He's a knockdown shooter. I mean, he's a great
Yeah.
shooter. He can also get his own shot a little bit. Like defensively, he's not good at this point. I think he
Yeah.
I think he actually used to be pretty okay.
Yeah.
And
He's
he's
a bigger
like,
guard. So like
yeah,
you
he's
can kind
got
of
good
like
size.
play off people, but then like
Yeah,
close with your length. Yeah.
he's got good long arms. He is pretty strong. He's got like that kind of old man strength to him, but
Yeah.
laterally it's not good. So I won't lie to you, but he would certainly help the offense. He's a really good shooter. So, and he's available too. I don't know. Again, I don't think it's going to be a situation, if I had to guess from what I've heard, that it would be Murray and Bogey in the same deal. But there's a
Yeah.
world where Murray goes somewhere else, and the Lakers come calling like, "Hey, what about so and so for Bogdanovich?" And I think the Hawks have to at least listen to that.
Yeah. They the other player that I do have real interest in is Hunter.
Hmm.
He's so fascinating because last year when you guys really, or when the Hawks like went on their bit of a run last year, right? They did, right? In the second half of the
They
year.
always seem to do that in the second half of the year. Yes.
Yeah. When other teams are like kind of tanking or whatever, you have some teams who just like rack up wins or whatever. But like I thought Hunter was a big part of that. Like I think he got healthy and then was is a good wing. There's a reason he got that 4-year, whatever it is, $80 million contract that he's currently on. Um, and so like for me, if you basically just kind of wanted to swap wings or something like that, and with Rui being a little bit cheaper, I think Rui has 1 year fewer on his deal as well.
Yep.
I do kind of wonder if Bogdan is off of the table, if these teams do want to expand the deal. And one asset that the Lakers could offer here is, well, we'll take that extra year of Hunter off of your books here. You can have Rui. I think that's a way that they can make this work. Like what do you where do you stand on Hunter? Because again, when he's good, when he's healthy, I think he's legit. But problem is like we just don't see it very often.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I'd say, just acknowledge right now, is that he hasn't played in about 5 weeks. He's got a knee issue right now. He's had knee issues before, so that's not
Yeah.
going to help his market. I'll say that. Like the Hawks have been pretty coy about what the timeline looks like. He's ramping up right now, but again, he has not played in about 5 weeks, and it's
Yeah.
hard to trade a guy when he's not playing.
I'm still ramping up to my New Year's diet. You know,
Exactly.
I'm working.
But aside from that, and that's a huge factor, I'll just lay that out there now. Yeah, I think Hunter is a really I think you used the word fast. It's really interesting. Is like when he's out there, he looks better than he is, if that makes sense. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but he's the kind of prototypical 6'8", long arm, strong. When he's making jump shots, it looks fantastic. All that stuff. I think
Yeah.
he's like a very average player. And I don't mean
Yeah.
that in a negative way. There's a lot of teams that could use an average 6'8" wing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And he's still
If
fairly
you're going to
young.
be average, it's that prototype. Is that what I
Yes.
want you to be average at?
Yeah, like he's an upgrade on Torian Prince. He's an upgrade on like that on that tier of guy. Like he's better than that.
Don't let
It's
Darvin
just
hear you say that.
listen. I covered Torian for a long time. I got the whole Torian Prince. I covered Cam. I mean I'm very familiar with all these guys.
I just don't know if you've had the Darvin Ham Torian experience.
Well, I probably have not had those guys. I will say Darvin was on the staff in Atlanta with Torian.
Yeah. I know.
He wasn't. But
he loves to remind us.
It's. I was at all those games. I will say that and just leave it there for now. But no, I think that Hunter is a guy who's like it's. The consensus that I've gotten is that contract is a little scary for folks because it's so long. This is year one of an extension. It's like $490 or whatever it is. It goes up, and when he is healthy, it's not a value, but it's fine. But if you have health concerns, like right now he's out, I think the Hawks would like to move that deal just for the money cap aspect of it all. I hadn't thought necessarily about a swap of Hunter and Rui. I'm racking my brain on that. I think that would actually kind of make sense for both teams because I think Hunter's better than Rui. I do actually, but I think the year cheaper, the year shorter and the few $1 million cheaper would appeal to Atlanta. Also, kind of a fresh start on both sides wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. So yeah, maybe as part of a bigger deal. I'm not trying to make fun of Hawks ownership, but they do like to pinch on the end sometimes financially. So that would not be the worst idea in the world.
I guess I make those same jokes about Lakers ownership all the time, and it hurts just a lot more because it's the Lakers that are
it is a little bit less defensible when you're the Lakers and you make lots of money and you have LeBron on your team. That would make it that would not be great necessarily.
It stings. Brad. It stings. The other player here that I'm gonna get scolded if I don't ask about is Clint Capella. The Lakers so far have been, I think, like pretty happy with the Christian Wood experience, but a lot of teams tend to be happy early with Christian Wood and then wind up not being as happy as that experience goes along. Capella, the concern that I have with him is that like if you trade for him, you're bringing in a $20 million player who I don't think would close games for you.
Yeah.
How open to moving? It sounds like they would be a little. If I had to like scale these players, Bogdan, they know that maybe they should move him, but like they like having him around. I think DeAndre Hunter probably would be happy to get off of that contract. I think Capella kind of fits somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that they have more of an impetus to move Capella because they have a Okongwu on their team who they're trying to evaluate what a Okongwu can be as a starter, as a 30-minute a game guy. And Capella is kind of, the way I've described it is he's kind of too good and too established to just like play 12 minutes a game on a bad team.
Yep.
Now, if you're the Lakers and you're number one, you're the Lakers, but number two, like you have the infrastructure and you could say with a straighter face that you're trying to compete right now. I think Clint would buy in more to a smaller role in a place like that.
He's at his position, so it's kind of like
it's an easier sell.
You aren't playing as much because Anthony Davis is over there, not Christian Okongwu.
Yeah, so I think Okongwu as a kind of
Onyeka Okongwu.
Yeah,
sorry.
I think with Capella, they would like to move him right now, but not because they don't like him. Like I think he's overpaid right now, if I had to guess slightly, on that deal, especially if he's not starting, which he wouldn't be in LA. So you would think he would have to be getting, whatever bad salary the Lakers want to get off of Gabe Vincent or whatever, however you put that together to get Clint, and it's sort of in a vacuum deal. If it's along with Dejounte, that's a little bit different. But yeah, I think they're certainly willing to move him. I agree with your pecking order, by the way. I think Bogey is the one they would like to not trade of those three guys. The other two, they are very open to for different reasons. I think that they still kind of believe in Hunter by all accounts. It's just that deal was a lot of money for a lot of years. If Capella was expiring, they could move him easily and they wouldn't worry about it. It's just that next year at 22 million or whatever it is not a disaster, but like, unless you have a real plan for that guy, that's not going to excite anybody to trade for. So it's like, I think they view him as a guy that they probably like to move, and he's been available out there for a long time. They almost traded him to Dallas this summer. They were close on that. And then Dallas
he's felt like such a Dallas player for so long.
Well, and then Dallas basically just decided, we're gonna go young, and they went with Derek Lively, and they made the right choice in a lot of ways. So Anyway, I think that would be interesting. I hadn't really thought of the Lakers as a Capella team, but I guess there is a role there if they wanted to. It wouldn't be a starting role, but I think that there are enough minutes. I would never want to play AD and Capella together if I could help it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he'd be an upgrade on what they have behind AD. It's just whether you want to pay for that and pay $20 million for it, which I kind of doubt. But
Yeah, I think if the Lakers were to acquire a center, like Drummond feels more likely than
Yeah.
Capella. I do like the idea of bringing in Capella and having him become an expiring next year, a big expiring next year, especially if they hold on to their 29 picks somehow, right? And you have those 3 picks plus that expiring and whatever contracts you have to send out for Trae Young potentially, according to those reports.
He's also very good, and so is Bogdanovich. Those guys are very. This is a small thing, but they're very valuable, veteran locker room guys. Both those guys are very, very well regarded. Different personalities, but Bogey and Capella are both very well. I'm not that Hunter isn't. Hunter's just a super quiet young guy.
Yeah.
Whereas Capella and Bogey are like A+ guys in my experience, what I've heard. So that's a small thing, but if you're trying to build a win now team around LeBron, that can kind of matter. So.
It does. Well, Brad, this has been an absolute blast. I apologize for waiting 41 minutes and 20 seconds to get here, but congratulations on your University of Michigan dub.
Yeah.
That was great.
Go Blue.
It was a fun win. For those 5 people who are Chargers fans who might be listening to this, I guess it leads to a Harbaugh, some happiness there. But no, I thank you very much for hopping on, man. Anything that you want to plug before we get you out of here?
No, I appreciate you having me. I joke with you offline that I suddenly got an uptick in Lakers tweets and requests and questions over the last. I was like, I wonder why I'm getting all. I'm
They're
kidding,
gonna keep coming.
Yeah, I mean, especially if a deal happens or gets close, or so buckle up. We still got 2 weeks left, and but there's a lot of I think we kind of laid it out. There's a lot of natural stuff here to talk about, so that's good. I appreciate you doing this. I host the Locked On Hawks podcast. If you are interested in hearing about Dejounte Murray on a daily basis until or if he becomes a Laker, you can find that. I read about the entire NBA as well as college basketball and the draft, etc. at Dime. What else is there? That's it. Those are the places to do basketball things at. So I appreciate you having me.
Well, the thing. So, for those of you who do, and I do say, I this is how I operate basically. If I'm going to talk to a host, or if I know that a subject is coming up or a team is coming up, I listen to local podcasts of theirs that I respect, and Locked On Hawks is always one of them. Not just because you go way back and we've been doing this for a long time and I've always respected your work, but also because you do the national stuff and you do watch other teams outside of the team that you cover. I think that really opens up the way that you talk about the Hawks. So check out Locked On Hawks. Check out his work over at Dime as well. And Brad, I'll talk to you in a couple weeks or so after the trade goes through.
We will see. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Have a great day, everybody. I will be back tomorrow. Yeah, I believe tomorrow with Jake Fisher. So we'll talk to you then.